Wednesday Talks, Pen on the Net, and we're here in Antigua still continuing our series of interviews with anyone who have an impact on the steel pan, art form and culture within the wider Caribbean region, and of course here in Antigua and Barbuda. And it's in that light that we're speaking to Mr. Victor Prescod, who is up here for some work with the Ministry of Culture with Antigua and Barbuda, but also as a judge for the recently concluded Moose of Pan 2008 Steel Band Festival. So we're really going to be speaking with you in a dual capacity, yes, and as many more as you care to share with us. So first of all, welcome to Wednesday Talks, Pen on the Net.
Thank you.
And you know, just very, very briefly, let's kind of have you introduce yourself to the global steel pan community in your capacity as to, you know, who exactly you are. I mean, you are a familiar face to quite a few people in the Caribbean circuit, but at the same time, we have a global audience of who you are, what you do, and, you know, what are your involvements essentially.
Okay, well, the current persona is project coordinator for the Pan in the Classroom project unit in the Ministry of Education in Trinidad and Tobago. That unit is part of the Curriculum Development Division, and its main focus is on having the steel pan used as the main instrument to teach music in schools. I have been involved with the steel pan for probably about 26 years. Started off with Hatter's Steel Orchestra in Trinidad, and yeah, I'm a Southerner. After completing my degrees in education and music education, went back home, worked with TCL Skiffle Bunch from 1986 until basically did some as their classical arranger, conductor, that sort of thing until about 2000. Took a break from that and was in the Ministry of Education as the curriculum officer for music, which is when the Pan in the Classroom program first started. Resigned from the ministry, started doing my own thing, and lots of workshops and so on, which is how I'm here with the Culture Ministry. And then went back into the ministry last year to help set up the arts program, basically in the curriculum division.
Okay, so
that's about it.
Yeah, that's quite a varied portfolio, and it's ever expanding and changing as the need requires. You've traveled extensively throughout the Caribbean region, so what are your thoughts essentially on the state of pan? I know it's an umbrella question, but you must hold certain observations as you go and you tutor in voice, but also adjudicate in terms of pan as well.
What's interesting to me is that in almost all of the islands, there are quite a few young people involved. That is very heartening. Unfortunately, the adults tend to get into lots of squabbles and bickerings over things that are rather petty, but the future looks bright, principally because we have young people who are not just passionate about pan, but they're also musicians, and in a number of areas are musically literate. With the advent of the Caribbean Examinations Council exams in music at the end of high school, we have a number of persons who use the steel pan as their principal instrument for examination. And the examination is not only about performing, but it's also arranging, composing, and listening and appraising. So it develops the ear, develops their composing and arranging skills.
You become a holistic musician in terms of
exactly. Pan. Yeah, so we have in Trinidad and Tobago probably about 50 to 60% of the students who enter the examination use the steel pan as their principal instrument. Yeah, so that's, as I said, quite hard.
In your role as adjudicator, be it in Trinidad and Tobago or abroad, what are some of the personal challenges, in your estimation, that really might foster maybe just a little bit of a challenging situation under which you must perform. We're trying to be as delicate as possible.
I think one of the things that needs to be looked at would be the criteria that's used for judging. Many times persons fault the adjudicators for results, but the adjudicators can only work within the established criteria. And competition is a strange thing when it comes to music, because there are some who say that competition stifles creativity, and in a sense it may. Once you're entering a competition, there are criteria, and if you are hopeful of being successful in the competition, then you need to address the criteria. What I have found is very often the arrangers of music for pan may not fully understand the criteria under which they're being judged, so that arrangers are creative. So you get into a lot of the creativity which does not necessarily address the criteria. And let me be a little bit more specific. The tendency for most of the competitions I've judged, you have 40 points for arrangement, 40 points for general performance, 10 tone, 10 rhythm, etc. But under arrangement, you look at things like melodic development, motivic development, and reharmonization. A number of times, arrangers will move the melody around within the pans. So you play the melody with the frontline pans, you move it into the mid-range, you move it into the background, you bring it back, you might change the key, but you still have the same melody. You've never developed the melody. While you're doing this, there are lots of lovely things happening around the melody with the other pans, but the melody itself has not been developed.
Right.
So that the music sounds good to the average listener.
But the criterion of melodic
development never happened.
Points, yeah.
So you've lost points there, and your band does not win, and you say, but the judge's teeth. But you know, that's just one example. You know, or even with reharmonization, sometimes arrangers simply change the key.
Which is not reharmonization.
So you have the same basic chord structure in a new key. You have not reharmonized. Or you go into the jam session. This is my favorite one. Yeah. Lots of creative music happening in the jam session that has nothing to do with the piece that's been arranged. So if you take a jam session from phase 2 and you drop it into an arrangement by Renegades that happens to be in the same key, it will work because it's just music that has no reference to tune.
Yeah.
You know, and that may be a minute and a half of music that really does nothing towards the criteria, and no marks are really given for it, but it sounds good.
So essentially, it's basically about the arrangers, at least some of them, being really understanding of what's being asked of them.
Yeah,
So
well, this is for a competition. Now, there's nothing wrong with music.
No, for a competition, which is where the adjudication
Yes.
aspect comes into.
So this is why some people say the competition stifles creativity. But there's a difference between competition and performing for the sake of performing, or composing or arranging music for its own sake.